Dr. Brian Clista. I am a pediatrician and one of the co-owners of the Pittsburgh Fitness Project, and we're starting our first wellness podcast series. And today we have with us Dr. Sally Sherman from the University of Pittsburgh, and I have to look at my notes because she has a lot of credentials and I'm never going to remember them all. So she's the assistant professor at the Department of Health and Physical Activity at the university, and she does yoga research and looking at how it affects our health through the Pitt's Physical Activity and Weight Management Research Center. So very cool stuff. She is a superwoman. I found out a lot of things about her that I didn't know. She's a dancer. She's an Ironman triathlete. She's a yogi and is Baptiste certified. Am I saying that correctly? Mm-hmm. And she is a mother. And she does all those roles, it seems, very, very well. Today we're here to talk about meditation and meditative breathing and how that can impact our lives. As a pediatrician myself, I use this often in my office practice when I have children that come in that are anxious, and we go through a meditative breathing exercise to learn how to center ourselves, how to learn to be calm and relaxed, and to put aside our worries and focus on the moment. So I just want to get a little bit of background about yourself. I saw that you started as a dancer. I thought that was really cool.
I did.
And you're a professional dancer for quite a while. How did you transition from being a dancer to moving into education and yoga and then a researcher? And where was that journey? How'd that come about?
Well, I think first came yoga. When you're sort of transitioning out of dance, you sort of have a broken body from really starting when you're like 3 years old. And so when you sort of transition out of dance in your late 30s, you have to look for something else that sort of feels like that movement and yet is healing. We can't just go from dancing often to running marathons, even if that's something you want to do, which that wasn't really something that I wanted to do at the time. So I ended up in a yoga class, and it was heated yoga, and which I thought was a mistake. I didn't think that the room should be that warm. And although I did look at myself many times because I was thinking I was bleeding because there was so much sweat coming down my arms, I fell in love with just sort of how good it felt, but still how challenging it was. And with Vinyasa yoga, the style of yoga that I teach, there's a little bit of movement and flow.
Right.
So I still felt like I was dancing in some regard. And also at the time, I was battling melanoma.
Oh, wow.
And I was just getting melanoma after melanoma coming back, and that's when I really took a look at how I could take my health into my own control. And sort of looking at more Eastern philosophies of healing rather than just traditional Western medicine. And I went vegan, and I discovered yoga and meditation and all of these things, and fell in love and felt at home. And as my body started to feel better, I started to be able to do more. And later did an Ironman triathlon, and then did another one, and did it without pain.
Wow.
And if you look at my knee MRI, you would say I would never be able to do that. But from years of yoga, just like healing my body, just by simplifying and not by adding on, but sort of addition by subtraction and taking things away and just getting down to like the way that your body is supposed to be. And people tend to think yoga is about like being all pretzel-y, but really it's about getting the body to be the way that it was designed to be. So I fell in love and I started teaching it, and it was my calling. I really felt like I was at home doing it and teaching it, and I really try to make it accessible to lots of different type of people, because what we see in the research is that the majority of people doing it are thin, white women, college educated.
Right.
And so I really care about getting it, especially to people who are not all of those things.
Right.
And specifically children as well, because kids, they're naturally really good at yoga.
Yeah, they're rubber bands.
They are. And they're naturally good at being mindful and being present. And so I find teaching yoga to children, I learn as well, because they're just more naturally able to do those things, whereas we as adults are very scattered and really
Right.
struggle with that busyness in our minds. And so when you have a child that comes into your office who's dealing with anxiety and that's not naturally how they are. Outside factors or possibly internal factors really contributing to them doing that. So it's about getting people back to the way that we're supposed to be instead of teaching people ways they should be. It's like removing the things that are keeping from being naturally who they are. And so I think that a lot of people can find healing in that, for sure.
That's awesome. So when you talk about, you know, that healing, that process, a lot of people will now use that buzzword mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that everybody understands
Right.
exactly what does mindfulness mean. So how do you define that?
Right, and it is really trendy right now.
Yeah.
And I hope it won't go away. I think that mindfulness and meditation has gotten popular through yoga. We are seeing yoga explode in this country. There's like 37 million people practicing yoga in 2016.
I see that even in Pittsburgh. There's so many
There's
lots
a
of
yoga studio on every
studios.
corner.
Yeah.
And back when I started doing yoga in Pittsburgh, very few places to go. And so it's great. There's now a yoga studio on every corner. There's something for everyone. And so many of the studios here in Pittsburgh are very unique. They do different styles. They take different approaches. So it's great. There's really room for everybody. But it is very trendy. And so I'm hoping we don't see it kind of tail off. Because again, mindfulness is something that we're all built to do, and not just like, you know, like sort of the diet of the day or the whatever's in trend right now, whatever Instagram is talking about, we're sort of picking up. But mindfulness is getting out of the mind that's thinking about the future. Because when we think about the future, we worry. How am I going to pay this bill? What am I going to be when I grow up? What?
I'm still asking that question.
Me too. My students at Pitt ask me all the time, and I say, yeah, I don't know. What am I going to be when I grow up? You know, when we think about the future, we are just filled with anxiety and the worry, and what if this happens or what if that happens? And when we think about the past, we often live in stories of our past, that thing that happened to me when I was growing up,
Sure.
or that person that wronged me, or so we have this anxiety and out of control in the future. We can't change the future, and we can't rewrite the past. And so when we're being mindful, we're actually living in the present moment. So an example of that would be, I'm here with you, but I'm worried about tomorrow. Well, how good am I in this moment with you if I'm concerned about tomorrow, or if I'm really upset about, you know, somebody that cut me off in traffic on the way here?
Well, I'm thinking about the next question that I'm going to ask you. But yeah, exactly.
So people don't get the best of us. And I think as a physician, and as specifically as like a holistic physician, where you try to treat your patients holistically, and I know this because it was 11 years ago this month that I met you.
Oh, really?
11 years ago this month.
Wow.
You were the
I
physician
remember.
on call when my daughter was born, and you came into our hospital room, and you were the first physician to examine her.
Small world.
That was 11 years ago this month. But you picked her up and you said, oh, I think she's jaundiced, and you took her over to the window and you held her to the window. And I was like, what? I mean, first of all, I was thinking, don't drop her, please. Don't break her. I was a helicopter parent even back then. But when you're working with a patient, and if you're thinking about, oh, I have 5 minutes with this patient, then I have to go move on to the next one, how good are you at treating your patients, right? So, and with my students, if I'm with my students but I'm thinking about what I'm doing next, they're not getting the best of me. And so when we're being mindful, we're living in that moment that we're in. And so that's challenging. It's very challenging. That's not how we're wired, or how we've wired ourselves, I guess.
Yeah.
We're multitaskers.
Yeah, I mean, with the information age,
Yes.
and it's very easy to get caught in that trap. Really,
Absolutely.
always
We can multitask and get so much done in a day. But some really interesting research came out of MIT, from neuroscientists in MIT, and they talked about the switch cost, where every time we sort of switch tasks, like, oh, you know what, I'm just going to check my email really quickly while I'm doing this, we actually lose 25 minutes of productivity in that switch.
Wow.
That's scary.
That's a lot of time.
It's a lot of time.
Yeah.
And if we're constantly checking, you know, I'll just check quick my text message is. And this is something we really struggle with at the University of Pittsburgh, because our students, while we are with them and lecturing to them and giving them all of ourselves, they're on their computers, they're on Facebook, they are answering texts, they are distracted. And there's a lot of conflict there, and going, well, the millennials, and this is what they're doing, but this is how we've trained them to be. This is how we've learned to be. So in being mindful, we would be actually living in the moment that our physical bodies are in. It's amazing that our physical bodies can be one place, but our mental body can be 85,000 different places.
Right. And that affects, though, your physical state.
Absolutely, it does. Because when your mind is somewhere else, it's in the future or it's in the past.
Right.
It's not in the now. So there's anxiety,
Right.
and sadness and stories and applying meaning to things. And then when we're living in the present moment, we're accepting, and sometimes there can be gratitude there. And peacefulness can be found in the present moment. So that can show up in our eating. So when we're being mindful, when we're eating, we are thinking about what we're eating when we're eating it. We're enjoying
Not being
it.
on the phone.
Yes. Or watching TV.
Yeah,
People tell
that's
me,
a big
and I'm
one.
sure people tell you, their children watch TV when they're eating. And yes, definitely the television. I tell everyone to kill their TV, because especially as parents, if we have the TV on, we're letting someone else raise our kids. Because the images and the things that are being, and TV is all about what you don't have, what toys you need and what foods you should be eating and all these things. But if we're being mindful when we're eating, maybe there's gratitude in the food. We have food to eat, and the hands that prepared this food. And that can't happen when we're eating sort of mindlessly, like eating when driving, which I still do.
Eating when we're stressed.
Eating when we're stressed,
or
bored, or procrastinating. Yeah. I love to eat when I'm procrastinating, doing something, or sad, or whatever. And we joke about being emotional eaters, but yeah, that's the opposite of mindfulness.
Sure.
And if we can get people to mindfully be physically active, I present at the Wanderlust yoga festivals, and one thing that I've done is teaching people mindful running.
Oh.
And in mindful running, telling people that they have to take out their earbuds when they run, they lose their minds. They say, I don't want to run without my earbuds. But then they also tell me how much pain they're in when they run. And so what I find, if I lead them through meditation and just some basic yoga, that's just the anatomy of their body, how their shoulders should be back and their core should be engaged and how their feet should be hitting the ground. They report that when they run like that, thinking about how their feet are hitting the ground and thinking about their breathing, which they can't do with music in, then they say, wow, I actually ran pain-free for the first time. And that you can actually enjoy exercise, even exercise you don't necessarily love, like people that don't love running, which I get it. But if we're on the treadmill, we're kind of zoning out to ESPN, and we're just pounding the pavement and just zoning out, we're not even aware of how our feet are hitting the ground. Or are you breathing? Are you holding the breath? Or are you holding tension in your upper body? But when you're being mindful and you're exercising while being mindful, you're aware of that, and so you can actually change it. So there's an empowerment in there when you're being mindful and you're exercising.
So what are some of I think when people think of mindfulness or meditation, their images of that yogi person sitting there doing
exactly.
for hours on end. So what are some of those misconceptions about meditation or mindfulness? What are some of those myths?
Yeah, I love to do the myth busting right off the bat, because people have lots of myths about it. One of them is that I don't have time. And that's where I tell people about the switch cost. You kind of don't not have time to do this and to think about this, because if we're wasting 25 minutes every time we're distracted from a device, then we're losing a lot of time. Another myth is that you have to meditate for 2 hours for it to work or for it to be worth it. And you can meditate for 1 minute. You can meditate taking 5 deep breaths. That I like to call those mindful moments. And often calling it a mindful moment gets people away from the word meditation, which people tend to think is, like religious or, or anti-religious. The Christians tend to believe that meditation is a religion that's like Hindu or Buddhism. And then non-Christians think meditation's being Christian, because the Bible does talk about meditation and meditating on the Word. So it's actually just simply not clearing the mind, which is a big myth. Oh, I have to clear my mind? Well, good luck with that.
Right.
Right? We can't do that. The human condition, we can't clear the mind. But in meditation, instead, we're choosing what to focus on. And that is a lot simpler than clearing the mind. But when you're choosing to focus on something like your breath, then what ends up happening is the other clutter that's in the mind just gets a little bit quieter. So it's not that it necessarily stops, eventually we hope it does, but it just gets a little bit quieter. And instead, you're bringing your awareness to that breath going in and out of the body.
Can we do that?
Yes.
Let's
I would love to do that.
Let's do a how-to on how
I would love
to.
that. So can I just guide you through
Yes,
it?
let's do that.
That
Okay.
would be awesome. I'll just talk you through a very simple, what I like to call mindful moment.
Okay.
And I just like to call this one sort of centering, because it doesn't lead you on some journey. It just gets you quickly to where you are now. And maybe you can just use this on some of your patients. That would be super awesome. So, okay, so put your feet on the ground and just feel your feet steady on the ground, and just pull your back away from the back of the chair just a little bit. When we're meditating, we're alert. We're not sleeping. That's another myth of, it's like, well, am I napping when I'm meditating? But you're actually alert. So that's why if people want to do it sitting, like I have them pull their backs away from their chairs. So put your hands down on your legs and just really feel the connection of your hands onto your legs. Sit up nice and tall with your spine, long neck, and go ahead and close the eyes. Now you don't have to meditate with the eyes closed, but it's just kind of nice to take away visual distractions. So just notice the body. Don't go into, I have to change something, there's something to fix. We tend to be like that. So just kind of be right where you are. Notice what your feet feel like in your shoes and the feet on the ground. Bring your awareness or your mind's eye sort of up to the knees. Maybe you'll notice anywhere where there's pain or discomfort or tension that could be released. Notice the connection of your hands to your thighs. And move your mind's eye up the spine into the heart. Just opening up in the chest. And up the neck, out through the top of the head. Start to just deepen the breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. Inhale. Exhale. One more breath. Inhale. Exhale. And open your eyes. So very simple. I didn't use any Sanskrit terminology from yoga. Just about be here now.
That makes me feel very zen.
Right? Because I took you out of what's next, and I took you out of whatever you left behind before we sat down, and it just puts you in the now. And there's peace to be found in that. Because this is even when we're in situations that aren't peaceful, we can really just feel our own physical bodies. And I love to use the breath. And I love to use too, placing your hand on your chest and feeling your heart, because these are things that are happening inside you and inside me, but also they're happening in the now. And it's a wonder when you take a couple deep breaths, how much better you feel, and you kind of think to yourself, well, what have I been doing all day? Did I breathe at all today?
Right, right.
It's a miracle that this happens and we don't even think about it, but we tend to breathe with these little short breaths, and then we just get our physiology completely anxious and out of whack. But then we can really control a lot by just using that breath and slowing it back down.
And I think it's paradoxical that, or it seems paradoxical that you slow down to take a few breaths,
Right.
you can then focus better
Right.
to do what you need to do. Instead of trying to do 10 things at once, you can focus on the task at hand and complete it more efficiently, really.
Right. Yes,
doing
and I
that.
call it speeding up by slowing down, because we tend to think I can't stop to do that because I have to go. But then if we actually slow down, we could be more creative and we can be more present with the people who are with us and with our tasks at hand. If we're getting interrupted by things all the time, and I tell people to use the airplane mode on their phones and to change the way that notifications are coming to them. We think we need those notifications constantly. We don't actually. If somebody needs to get us, they'll get us, right? I didn't actually have to know if somebody liked that photo on Facebook, but the notification comes to me, and if I don't respond to me, it'll send me an email. So,
Right.
changing the way that notifications come to us, and maybe your emails only need to be pushed through to you every 25 minutes or 10 minutes, or instead of everything has to be so immediate.
Yeah.
Right. And another thing, and I really like, that's one thing I really like about the Apple Watch, there's the breath cues. It'll tell you,
I didn't know that.
and there are a lot of different apps that will do this. There are a lot of free resources that I really like to recommend. And one thing that's built into the Apple Watch is a breathing cue. And it'll tell you, take a deep breath. And you kind of say to it, like, okay, this is an okay time. I find that I tend to get it at the wrong times. No, this is not an okay time. But what it has is like a lotus flower that will open up, and you need to breathe in when it's opening up. And then the lotus flower will close, and you breathe out as the lotus flower closes. But there's there's a YouTube one that just says breathing exercise 5 minutes. If you just go to YouTube and Google that. Same thing, it's a flower that and I give this one a lot to teachers that I work with who want to find simple ways to put meditation in their classrooms. But teachers feel very overwhelmed with, do I need to get some kind of yoga certification or go train at some ashram to be able to do that? And there's a lot of resources like that as well, like on YouTube, that you can just press. If you prefer for someone to talk you through a meditation, there are ways to do that. And I have a website too that that Lululemon actually made for me a few years ago.
Oh, nice.
Because I really wanted to provide yoga for free and meditation for free. Not only for people who can't afford to go to yoga. Yoga tends to be expensive, just like going to a gym, belonging to a gym. But also for people who can't get there for whatever reason, moms that can't leave home, when people are traveling. So my website is all free podcasts. So it's basically my voice talking you through the poses and talking you through what you need. But then there's also meditation podcasts. And the one that is clicked on and used the most is the 1 minute.
Sure.
A 1 minute, okay, I'll meditate for 1 minute. I'll see what that's like. If you only have 1 minute, 1 minute is better than no minute.
What do you tell people who feel like they're just, let's say, antsy people, and they don't feel like they could even sit for a minute? They're just really active. So what do you tell them for, they're at work, or they feel that their job is so busy that they can't take that minute? What can they do throughout the day? Just
Yes, a lot of things, and a lot of these things are in our control that we would do anyway. So if they want something to do kind of in their workplace throughout their day, I would say to take control of your devices. And because if we're already sort of anxious people, if we're constantly getting these notifications and these sounds and these alerts, that can really contribute to that anxiety. But also, so taking control of those things and using airplane mode or swapping out electronics when you don't need to be. I mean, when I ask people, when's the last time you read like a paperback book that wasn't on a device, they can't even like remember when that was. But I really recommend mindful moments at work. Getting away from the computer, or just doing, like, even sitting at the computer and doing what I just had you do. But I really recommend mindful walks, and not even out of your building, sometimes not even out of your cubicle, or just walking down the hallway or walking to the bathroom.
Well, that's a good one, because
That's
we all
a
got to
good
go
one.
to the bathroom
Everyone
at
has
some
to go to the
point.
bathroom. So I say, like, make
Yeah.
a rule that when you go to the bathroom, you don't take your device with you, and you listen to your feet hitting the ground on the way there. You take the walk on the way there to take deep breaths. And you don't talk on the phone, and you don't take any messages or any alerts. And then coming back, you're listening to how your feet are hitting the ground. Those things are happening in the present moment. Maybe you look around the hallway and you notice things on the wall, or you notice people, even talking to someone, hello. That's happening in the present moment. How many people are walking around and they can't even make eye contact with you because they're so in their heads?
Yeah.
And on Pitt campus, my students all have earbuds or their Beats on their ears. And they don't even know when, like, a faculty member is trying to communicate with you. And I'll go up to them and interrupt them because they're here.
Right.
They're in here. And so sometimes it can even be making eye contact with someone and saying hello and coming back. And then you were in the present moment. You were on your way to the bathroom, which you were going to do anyway.
Right.
But can you make that actually a mindful moment? And sometimes the word meditation throws people off, so using it as, like, a mindful moment. Like, that was my mindful moment. And I recommend, right outside my door at Pitt is the restroom. And so I go down the hallway and down the stairs into the one that's further away from me, in order to have that mindful moment just be a little bit longer. And you get, just a little physical activity as well.
Yeah.
Just kind of getting up and circulating through the body, and that's also good for the mind
Great.
as well.
So, I mean, you have your PhD in
Exercise physiology.
exercise physiology. So, what other ways has your research, or the research that you're working on, how has it been, what scientific benefits besides, like, stress relief do you think this can provide?
Well, a lot. Time Magazine just did a really good issue. Well, they've done the issue and they've kind of reprinted it a few times that says mindfulness, and it really gets to a lot of the science on mindfulness specifically. Meditation is really hard to research because we can't see it. We can't put it in a petri dish. We can't, like, taste it, or when I was putting you through the meditation, how did I know if you were really doing it? Or if you were thinking about what's for dinner? So it's sort of hard to research those things. But a lot of neuroscientists are looking at the brain and really seeing how it's affecting a lot of things. But everything from seasonal allergies to infertility to autoimmune disorders to, you name it. And mindfulness is going to assist in meditation, at the University of Pittsburgh, and the type of research that happens in my department is specific to physical activity and weight loss. And a lot of the research when it comes to eating and binge eating disorder, or overeating and obesity, looks at, if you have someone do just a little mini meditation similar to what I just did to you before they eat, how does it affect their eating behaviors? And what they find is people eat less. They tend to crave sweets less, which seems like a great thing for all of us, right? It would be great if I didn't crave sweets. And they have less incidence of binge eating disorder. And, anytime that we leave the body, that's never a good thing for any behavior. So really anything. And I think it allows people to take control of their own physical bodies instead of feeling victim to their high blood pressure, or feeling victim to their anxiety. There's an empowerment aspect that happens. So people can feel empowered, like, you know what, all of this chaos is going on around me, but I'm going to just sit here and I'm going to take control of myself in this moment. And there can be a lot of empowering things that happens in that for your health. But yes, everything from head to toe. Obsessive compulsive disorder, the seasonal allergies was really surprising to me, but just sort of everything. So.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to remember it really doesn't have to be this prolonged chant or something you have to do. I mean, it literally can be a breath.
It can be one
It can
breath.
be a breath.
Yes, one breath before your reaction happens.
Yeah.
So one breath before you make that phone call. One breath before you walk into the doctor's office and you're worried about bad news. One breath before the job interview. One breath before you get your kids out of bed in the morning. One breath before whatever. It could be, just a couple breaths before bedtime. So many people say they have insomnia. And, are you laying in bed listening to the chatter? And so using breaths at bedtime can be very restorative. And otherwise, if we're laying there just worry, and what are we worried about tomorrow? We're worried about the future. And so just getting to the present moment and slowing down, and that can be very, very simple. And some people, and we've talked about chanting a little bit, some people prefer to use a mantra. And what a mantra is just like a phrase or a word that you could say to yourself over and over again while you're breathing. And
it's just something to keep your focus on.
Something to keep your focus on. Again, we're not trying to clear the mind, we're trying to focus the mind. We're choosing, so, like an easy one would be like, let go, or be here now. That's a really good mantra. Just like, I'm just going to breathe, and I'm thinking on my exhale, I'm going to breathe in. On my exhale, I'm thinking, be here now. On my inhale. So for some people that maybe aren't comfortable doing nothing, sometimes those mantras can be really beneficial to them. And we can move. We don't have to sit still and be meditative. We don't have to sit still. That's what's so great about yoga. It's a moving meditation. Now, if we're going through the moves and we're worried about tomorrow, will we get benefits from it? Sure, we'll probably get some, but I think we're missing a lot of the really good ones. So in doing yoga, and the instructor's asking you to reach your hands and think about your feet pressing down into the ground and really bend your right knee. And when you're doing all those things, you're being mindful. You're getting instructions and you're putting them in the now. And that's a mindful practice. Tai Chi. But you can absolutely go for a walk and have it be meditative. Now, if you're walking and you have music, I would argue that it's harder to really be sure that you're being mindful with music playing, and people don't like to hear that. They say, I need to exercise with my music. So I really challenge them to, and when I go teach at festivals, I don't allow them to bring music on their runs, and what I find is that they report, wow, that was actually freeing. And I was able to actually look around me and see the birds and the sky and the trees, and I wouldn't have been aware of that if I had music in my ears.
And I try to teach this to my kids. I probably do it more for kids. I go through this breathing routine that we did for kids that are anxious, but probably something beneficial for everyone to learn something about. I think it's really important for youth to learn these skills because we live in such an instant age, and we're so easily distracted. I think this becomes even more important for people because you can train your mind to respond in these ways instead of always being here, 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 and here.
Right.
It's the paradox of being here, 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 and here, and here, but really being disconnected. Even though we have all this social media, but actually we're being more disconnected by constantly looking at this instead of just focusing on where we're at. And
Right. And wouldn't it be great if we all learned this really young?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can train, like I said, I think learning it when you're young and learning to train your mind to be that way. How better off would everybody be?
Right. And I would encourage you too to do it with, and I know that you're a pediatrician, so mom and dad are with the child when you're treating them, just like we see in child obesity interventions. The intervention really only works if we intervene on mom and dad as well.
That's a good point.
So intervening on mom and dad with the breathing, maybe because, like I said, it's not really normal for children to be anxious. What is contributing to that child being anxious. And sometimes it's physiological, but sometimes something's happening in the
Sure.
environment. Maybe mom is a really anxious person and therefore putting it on the child. So I would definitely encourage parents to take these, you don't have to call it meditation, these mindful moments, and do them with your children.
Yeah, I think even with eating, I think that's a good thing I can incorporate into my practice is like, before you eat, just take
Right.
a couple breaths, slow yourself down.
Right.
So that you take your time when you're eating.
Right.
Because I always talk about, there's a signal going from your stomach to your brain that takes 20 minutes to get there, and if you're eating
Right.
quickly, you may think you feel you're not full yet, but you're actually
Right.
full, you just haven't received the signal. But if you slow down
Right.
and be mindful about that, then
Because if you're getting the signal,
Yeah.
but your mind is thinking about something else,
Right.
your mind didn't receive the signal.
Yeah.
And in the research too, we see that in doing the little mini meditations before eating, like we just talked about, they tend to experience that fullness sooner.
Right. Right.
So they're receiving that signal, and then they're checked in for the signal, so they get it. They get the mail. It's like, oh, okay, I'm done. And also knowing when I'm about to eat, am I actually hungry? But if we're not checked into that signal, how do we know if that hunger sensation is actually there or if it's something else?
All right, well, that concludes our podcast for the day. It was great meeting with Dr. Sherman. I think I learned a lot for myself and how I want to go throughout my own day and work with my own patients and families in my practice. And I hope this podcast was helpful for you. And if you want to get more information from Dr. Sherman, you can visit her website.
It's www.sallyshermanpittsburgh.com. SALLYSHERMAN Pittsburgh.com.
And we have active recovery yoga here every Sunday at 10 o'clock at Pittsburgh Fitness Project. So it's a lot of restful poses and stretches, again, to help you with your mindfulness on your weekend and to help you recover from your week. So we'd be happy to have you here, and we'll be happy to have you at all of our podcasts each month here at the Pittsburgh Fitness Project.